Mischief Night is the night before Halloween, where young individuals partake in harmless pranks and jokes. It's a night dedicated to playful mayhem, but sometimes it can escalate to more destructive acts. On Mischief Night in 1975 in Greenwich, Connecticut, Martha Moxley and a group of her friends went out to partake in the night's festivities. Dorothy Moxley, Martha's mother, began making phone calls as her concerns grew when her daughter didn't return home around 1 a.m. Authorities soon became involved in the search for Martha, and on Halloween afternoon, authorities unfortunately discovered her deceased body underneath a tree near the back of her family's property. Martha Moxley was born in San Francisco in August of 1960. The Moxley family moved to Greenwich, Connecticut shortly before Mischief Night of 1975. Martha was considered a popular girl who was attractive and enjoyed the typical things a teenager would. Martha Moxley was discovered with her pants and underwear pulled down to her ankles. An autopsy showed that there were no signs of sexual assault, but in fact Martha Moxley was bludgeoned and stabbed to death with a Tony Penner golf club. The force of the blows caused Martha to receive a skull fracture, which shattered the golf club into 4 pieces. Martha was then stabbed with the sharp end of one of those pieces. It is believed that Martha was murdered between 9:30 and 10 p.m. on Mischief Night of 1975. As investigators searched Martha Moxley's crime scene, they discovered that she had been attacked by her driveway and dragged to the spot they discovered her at. Authorities canvassed the neighborhood and discovered that Martha Moxley was last seen with Tommy and Michael Skakel. The Skakel family was another big family living in Greenwich who had ties to the Kennedy family. They were cousins through marriage of Ethel Skakel and Robert F. Kennedy. Martha Moxley became friends with 2 of the Skakel boys, Michael and Tommy. Authorities discovered that Martha, along with 2 of her friends, visited the Skakel residence around 9 p.m. on Mischief Night of 1975 and sat in their car with Michael listening to music. At 9:15 p.m., Tommy Skakel joined them. 2 other Skakel brothers and their cousin, Jimmy Terrian, joined 15 minutes later. Allegedly, Michael, Jimmy, and the other Skakel brothers left for Jimmy's residence, while Tommy, Martha, and her friends stayed back. When interviewed by police, Michael Skakel stated that at 9:30 p.m. on Mischief Night, he left Martha and Tommy to go to Jimmy's residence, and when he returned home around 11:30 p.m., he went straight to bed. Tommy Skakel was also interviewed by authorities and stated that Martha left not too long after Michael left around 9:30 p.m. The family tutor, Ken Littleton, told authorities that around 10 p.m., Tommy was watching television and he noticed nothing unusual about him. Tommy Skakel became authorities' prime suspect because he was the last person to see Martha Moxley alive. Soon after Rushton Skakel, the boy's father, ended his family's cooperation with investigators, and authorities had no evidence that tied Tommy Skakel to the murder. Unfortunately, Martha Moxley's murder would grow cold. Though Martha's case may have gone cold, her memory stayed alive with the constant media coverage of her murder. Determined to clear his son's name, Rushton Skakel hired a private investigator to look into the murder of Martha Moxley. During their investigation, the private investigators interviewed Tommy and Michael Skakel about the night Martha was murdered. The results from the private investigators showed that the Skakel boys were not as honest as Rushton thought. The boys' recollection of the night of Martha Moxley's murder differed from the original stories they told authorities. Tommy explained,
"I lied about doing homework at 9:30 p.m. I actually spent another 20 minutes kissing Martha."
Michael stated,
I went with Jimmy and returned to my home around 11:30 that night. Instead of going inside, I decided to go peep inside a neighbor's window, but the lady who normally stands in front of her window naked never showed up, so I decided to see what Martha was doing. I climbed the tree near her home and threw pebbles at her window. When I got no answer, I masturbated before running home and entered my house at 12:30 a.m.
The private investigators shared with Rushton their findings about Michael, and Rushton told the firm to dispose of the report because he didn't need or want it and paid them for their services. However, a freelancer being paid by the private investigation company to organize the report decided to sneak a copy to a reporter who wanted justice for Martha Moxley. Authorities received many different reports regarding Michael Skakel over the years. While attending reform school in 1978, 2 former classmates of Michael claimed he confessed to Martha's murder. Michael allegedly said to one of them,
I'm going to get away with it. I'm a Kennedy.
Dorothy Moxley was told by a neighbor that they did not think Tommy was capable of murder, but they'd believe Michael did it any day. Several neighbors expressed their concerns to authorities about Michael's obsession with small animals, describing Michael's supposed pleasure from harassing birds and squirrels, even hitting them with golf clubs. Jonathan Benedict, the state's attorney, and a one-man grand jury convened to look at the evidence in Martha Moxley's murder. The prosecution requested the one-man jury. Due to the failures of the other investigations practices, this ensured that the judge would be allowed to perform the functions of a grand jury. The prosecution asked Gregory Coleman, a classmate of Michael's, to testify, and he explained that Michael told him that he was going to get away with murder because he was a Kennedy. The judge ruled that there was enough evidence to charge Michael Skakel with murder, so in 1975, Michael Skakel was charged with Martha Moxley's murder. Though Michael was 42 at the time of arrest, he was charged as a juvenile because he was 15 at the time of Martha's murder. Michael surrendered to authorities in Greenwich and pleaded not guilty to the charges. He was released on a $500,000 bond. Judge Maureen Dennis ruled that Michael Skakel be tried as an adult instead of a juvenile due to the fact
there is no available or suitable state institution designed for the care and treatment of children to which the juvenile court could commit the now 40-year-old respondent that would be suitable for his care and treatment, should he be adjudicated delinquent for the murder of Martha Moxley.
The trial for Michael Skakel began. The prosecution's, Jonathan Benedict's, opening statements started with him explaining to the court that they would hear from several individuals who spoke to Michael about the murder.
Some people can't keep a secret. As it turns out, he's been talking about his night of mischief since at least the spring of 1978.
The prosecution stated that the Skakel family went to great lengths to hide the truth from the authorities. Michael Skakel's defense attorney, Michael Sherman, expressed to the jury to not get lost in all the emotions in the case because the prosecution had zero physical evidence against Michael. The defense stated that the prosecution's two key witnesses were dead, and the investigators that worked the case were now old and retired.
You'll see they have a lot of pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, but the problem is the jigsaw pieces don't fit.
Dorothy Moxley took the stand to testify.
I went to the Skakel house Halloween morning to search for Martha. Michael Skakel opened the door and he appeared to be hungover.
In cross-examination, the defense questioned Dorothy's account of the noises she heard mischief night.
I could only make out teenage voices, but I'm not sure if Martha was one of them,
Dorothy explained. The prosecution claimed that Michael's motive was his anger with Martha because she rejected his advances while having a sexual liaison with his brother Tommy, so he murdered Martha in a drunken rage. Gregory Coleman would take the stand once again to testify due to the case being transferred to adult court. When Sherman questioned Gregory about why his number of times Michael spoke about the murder changed from 5 to 6 times to 1 to 2 times, his reply was,
"I was on drugs when I came before the grand jury."
Not too long after his testimony, Gregory would be found deceased from a drug overdose. John Higgins, another former classmate of Michael's, testified that Michael cried to him one day confessing to the murder.
Me and Michael were at a party when he recalled a time when he went through some golf clubs located in his garage. He explained that he was running through some woods. He had a golf club in his hand. He looked up, he saw pine trees. The next thing he remembers is he woke up in his house. That wasn't the only statement he made to me either. Michael at first couldn't recall killing Martha. Eventually, Michael confessed to the crime to me.
Charles Seigan, another classmate of Michael's, testified.
Michael explained to classmates that on the night of Martha's murder, he was drunk and he was unsure if he was responsible or not.
The prosecution wanted to use entries from Martha Moxley's diary in order to prove the rivalry between the brothers. The defense, however, stated that Martha's diary entries had no connection to the case and would prejudice the jury against Michael Skakel. The prosecution countered.
The victim's relationship with the Skakel brothers, her annoyance with Michael, and ambivalence toward Tom's advances are relevant to motive. The state's evidence will show that the defendant has made admissions indicating his romantic interest in the victim, and has also stated that she rejected him the night she was killed. That triggered the murder.
The judge noted that Martha Moxley's diary entries were hearsay, but ruled them as admissible as evidence. The prosecution presented in court a passage from Martha's diary from September 12, 1975, where she wrote,
Dear Diary, today was nothing extra special at school. Peter was being his usual self. Me, Jackie, Michael, Tom, Hope, Maureen, and Andra went driving in Tom's car. I drove a little then, and I was practically sitting on Tom's lap because I was only steering. He kept putting his hand on my knee. I drove some more, and Margie and I kept yelling out the sunroof, and then we went to Friendly's, and Michael treated me, and he got me a double, but I only wanted a single. So I threw the top scoop out the window, then I was driving again, and Tom put his arm around me. He kept doing stuff like that. What? Jesus, if Peter ever found out, I would be dead. I think Jackie really likes Michael, and I think maybe he likes her. Maybe because he was drunk, but I don't know.
On September 15, 1975, Martha wrote about how her, Michael, and Jackie hung out in an RV on the Skakel property. Martha explains that Michael expressed to her that he didn't like Jackie, but Martha wrote in her diary that
He leads Jackie on so much, I can't believe it.
a couple days later, on September 19, 1975, Martha wrote about a fight her and Michael had.
Michael was so totally out of it that he was being a real asshole in his actions and words. He kept telling me that I was leading Tom on when I don't like him, except as a friend. I said, well, how about you and Jackie? You keep telling me that you don't like her and you're all over her. He doesn't understand that he can be nice to her without hanging all over her. Michael jumps to conclusions. I can't be friends with Tom just because I talk to him. It doesn't mean I like him. I really have to stop going over there.
The prosecution pointed out that a little more than a month after that entry, Martha was murdered. The defense called James Dowdle, formerly known as James Terrian, to testify. James explained that him, Michael, and the Skakel family went to dinner, then returned to the Skakel residence around 9 p.m. on mischief night.
I left around 9:30 p.m. that night, and Michael and two of his siblings walked with me. Tommy, however, stayed behind to talk to Martha. Michael stayed at my house, and we watched Monty Python's Flying Circus on TV at 10 p.m. Around 10:50 p.m., Michael left my house.
The prosecution pointed out that James couldn't remember many details from the night of the murder. He couldn't remember who was at the dinner, who may or may not been drinking alcohol, what car was used, or if anyone partook in drugs that night. Both the prosecution and the defense rested their case. The jury would find him guilty of murder. Michael Skakel would be sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. In August of 2003, a former classmate of Michael's, Tony Bryant, explained to Michael's lawyer that two of his friends were visiting Belhaven on the day Martha was murdered, and they confessed to him that they murdered her. Michael Skakel's defense attorney immediately requested a retrial, but the judge rejected the request. Then, in 2010, Skakel's new attorney, Stephen Seeger, filed an appeal against his trial attorney, Michael Sherman, arguing that he failed to provide a competent defense. They believed that Sherman should have called Dennis Osorio to the stand because he would have been able to verify that Michael was in fact at Jimmy's home that night during the time investigators believed Martha was murdered. In 2011, a judge ruled that Michael Skakel's lawyer, Michael Sherman, did not represent him effectively and ordered a new trial. Michael was released from prison after serving 11 years. A couple years later, in 2016, the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled Michael's legal team was competent and his murder conviction was reinstated. At the 2016 hearing, Martha Moxley stated,
I am sure that Michael is the young man who swung the golf club. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Michael's legal team filed a motion to reconsider the Connecticut Supreme Court's decision. Michael Skakel's conviction was vacated once again in 2018 when the Connecticut Supreme Court reversed its 2016 decision. 45 years after the murder of Martha Moxley, the prosecution announced that they would not seek a retrial for Michael Skakel, believing that they weren't able to prove the case against him without reasonable doubt.
He spent 11.5 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit.
Michael's lawyer explains,
and was put through every thinkable proceeding until the case was finally dismissed.
After Michael's release, he sued the lead detective as well as the town of Greenwich for alleged civil rights violations and malicious prosecution. The lawsuit explains that the lead detective was determined to convict Michael for financial interest and ignored key evidence involving other suspects in Martha's murder. According to Michael's legal team,
the state knew that there were other more likely suspects and that there was no probable cause to arrest and or maintain a prosecution against Michael Skakel, but continued to do so intentionally and maliciously in order to convict a Kennedy cousin.
The lawsuit sought an undisclosed compensation and punitive damages. Martha's father, David Moxley, died a decade after her murder. John Moxley, Martha's older brother, stated,
Martha was my little sister. She got all the best grades and made all the friends. Our relationship was going on a really positive direction in high school. Those were good times. Nothing is going to bring Martha back. There is no such thing as justice in this sort of thing. There are only losers.
Martha Moxley later told interviewers,
I know he is free, and that's fine. I really don't think there's any need for another trial. This has gone on so long, it just keeps going on and on. It's hard to relive it every time. It's very hard. I still believe Michael Skakel murdered Martha, though, but nothing is going to bring Martha back. Nothing is going to bring Martha back. She loved animals, always had a cat. She loved art. She was always drawing and doing things like that. She loved people. She was a very good student. I have a feeling she would have been a teacher. Once somebody in your family is murdered, it never goes away. You have to realize that your loved one would not want you to sit around all day and cry. Your loved one would want you to get out there and do things.